Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast. Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher dig into conversation about women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, and celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast, presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Hi, it's Mandee, and you know I love to relax, right? I've shared the secret of where I go, and I know you know. It's Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa, of course. I love sharing about my favorite treatments and highlighting the wonderful staff at Hand & Stone in Tyler, and I'm excited to share this time about Danielle. She helped me relax and feel comfortable from the start. I shared with her that I prefer to silently recite affirmations in my mind during the massage, and she allowed me to do so. It was such a nice compliment to her work. Her pressure was instinctively firm, and she got right into the spots that needed attention. The tension released so quickly. I shared that I had been riding my exercise bike consistently, so she stretched my legs, and wow, that was such a great release of tight muscles. I was totally relaxed. Now, I know you want to go. It's your turn to get pampered. Visit Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa located in the Cumberland Shopping Center or book online now at handandstonetyler.com. Hey friends, we're back with the Celebrating Women podcast. I'm Mandee Montana here with Ashley Fisher.
Hello.
And Ashley and I have been talking about this concept off mic, and we thought, wow, we should talk about this on the podcast because there might be people who would also benefit from it. It's this idea of curating your life. And so, Ashley, you brought this up to me over the weekend. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of that concept?
For me, it is, so I love words. If I haven't said this already, I'm a words person. And so a curator of a museum, their responsibility is to make sure that the best of the best is what is on display. And they're constantly reevaluating that. And so for me, I've just kind of had this thought like, okay, what does the museum of my intake when it comes to social media, when it comes to, interactions with people, like, am I curating that really well? Am I making sure that what I'm letting in my ears, my eyes, my heart, my space, is it safe and healthy for me? And if it's not, what am I doing with that? And I want to just add this disclaimer that this does not mean make sure everything in your life that you're letting in is like sprinkles, and sunshine and unicorn farts. That, and I'm not saying to make sure that your life is an echo chamber either, because I believe we need to have friends and books and content that challenge our thinking. But there are some things, especially like we can start like with social media, that if we're consuming all the time, it doesn't produce health. It produces things like fear and anxiety or comparison that leads us down a yucky trail, that kind of thing. So
I love that because this is something that I've been working on for myself for a while, is curating my social media feed. So when I hear people talk about seeing a lot of negativity on social media, I'm like, you do? Because I got very intentional a few years ago, and this is not a political statement at all, but when election times got really tense and both sides were being really negative and there was a lot of just mudslinging on both sides of the fence, I just got tired of it. And so I started unfollowing people. And some of these people are people I care a lot about. I want to continue to be friends with them and see pictures of their kids and, follow their lives. And, I just chose to, there's a snooze button on Facebook where you can snooze a person for 30 days. I started there to see if it was just like a short-term thing. And then if it became something where they just got obsessive, then I just unfollowed them for a while. And then every so often I go through my unfollowed list and I reevaluate. Right. Kind of like you're talking about the curator of a museum. I just reevaluated whether or not that person needed to be popping up in my feed. And so at this point, my feed is pretty well curated. Like, I'm pretty proud of
it's a happy place.
It really is. I see pictures of people's children.
Yeah.
I see pictures of food. I see positive quotes. I see people who are wanting to show up and make their part of social media a little bit brighter. And I'm not saying that to brag or whatever. I'm just saying it's possible that if you want to participate in that space, you can.
Yeah.
It does take work, though.
Yeah. And it takes intentionality.
Very much so.
And it takes really first, before being intentional about curating it, you first have to stop and do like an inventory of, hey, have I been feeling kind of low lately? Let's maybe pour into why. And then if, that night you're scrolling on social media and all of these feelings start up, maybe go, okay. Because, we talked about off mic. There have been times, plenty of times, where at night I'll be scrolling Facebook right before bed, and which is a bad habit to be in. And I'll have a little check in my heart, like, why don't you put it down? Like, nah, just a little bit more. And inevitably, anytime I override that check, I stumble across something that really deeply disturbs me, bothers me. And makes it difficult to go to sleep, or just puts a thought in my mind that, like, I just didn't need to see that right now before I'm going to bed. It's not that I don't want to know that AI is a huge thing in life right now, but that freaking stresses me out.
Does it really?
It does.
The idea of artificial intelligence?
Yes, it really does. I love like the cool parts about it, but I don't trust people with it. And I'm really worried about a robot apocalypse.
I mean, we're laughing about it, but
I
know.
So there's just so many lines I feel like that are blurred, and the argument could be made like, well, we've been blurring lines for ages, which is so true. And there's so much cool stuff you can do with it. It freaks me out to think about something man created becoming smarter than us. Like, that just freaks me out.
Yeah, I totally see that. I remember having a teacher in 7th grade, an English teacher. We always talk about teachers on this podcast. They're remarkable people. But she actually she had a very similar belief system that you do. And she talked about it so much in our class. Now, if you think about this, I was in 7th grade in 1997.
Yeah.
Okay. She had a lot of fear and worry about this, so much so that I don't know if you guys did this at your school, but we had the opportunity to like have a poem published in like in a book of like other 7th graders or something, whatever. Anyway, but I had a poem published, and it was, I cannot remember what the type of poem it is. We were studying those, and now I can't remember. But it starts with "I believe" every stanza, and it was about computers taking over the world, because this teacher, that was like, she talked about it all the time. And it's so funny to look back. I found it when I was moving, my last move 3 years ago, and I pulled it out and I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so funny, because I mean, we walk around with computers in our pockets now, our phones, right? Like, and we're so conditioned to like
and in some ways they have kind of taken over.
They have. And so, I totally, I guess I'm saying this to validate you and also to comfort you, because like, I mean, we've come so far, but I also really believe that the human spirit is really something beautiful, and there will be incredible art and advances that are made. And what I've been reading about recently is how they're using it in medical science to help us have longer, healthier lives, and to identify things like at stage 0.
Yeah.
So that we can treat them. And I mean, right now it's super expensive and kind of crazy, but I really do feel like if we can focus on the positive sides of it, not, what do we call it? Toxic positivity. That's not where I'm going with this, but I do think there's going to be some really good things that come out of it.
But that's just a prime example. Like, a lot of people are not stressed out by AI. It can really bother me, because I can think, first of all, I hate apocalyptic movies.
Oh yeah, I don't watch them.
I don't like them. I don't like the concept of one lonely individual on a planet that's been ravaged. Like, feels so lonely and hopeless. I just don't like it. And so this is just a thing. Like, I want to know what's up, and I'm going to stay updated. I'm not going to deep dive on it on social media, on the interwebs, before I'm trying to go to sleep at night.
Right.
And I'm going to dose it in a way that keeps me informed, but doesn't stress me out. You know what I mean? So it's just curate,
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I feel like the last, I don't know, I'm 34 now. I'm learning that this is such an important piece of the puzzle in life.
I think so too.
It's just very important to curate what you're letting in your eyes. We even talk about this with our kids, like, hey, we want to be watchful what we let in our eyes and let in our ears. But it has profound effects on us as well, adults.
Yeah. I think you and I share this in common. I think we're both pretty empathetic people.
Yes.
So we have a deep level of empathy for not just other people, but like we take things in and internalize when there's a lot of emotion surrounding it. And so I think movies are a really good example of this as well, because I really love film. There are so many things about it. I also love words. I love storytelling. I love cinematic scores. I love beautiful cinematography. I love beautiful acting. Like, I just love the whole experience.
Yep.
And when I watch a movie, I don't watch it in passing. I don't also have an iPad in front of me. I don't also have my phone scrolling. Like, I'm usually like, I'm part of the story.
You are in it.
I am in it.
Yeah.
And so when I'm really careful now about the films that I watch, because I remember watching like Black Hawk Down, for example, movies that are about war, they ravage me inside.
Really?
I dream about them later.
Yeah.
I get so into the story. I hurt so much for the characters. Whether it's based on a true story or not.
Right.
In my mind at that moment, it feels very real. And maybe that's my imagination too. I just have a really strong sense of imagination, but I have to curate that. I'm really careful, and it drives my husband crazy because he does not watch movies the same way that I do. He can let things sort of wash over him and pass, and so he'll turn something on like Demolition Man at night when we're laying in bed to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I can't watch that and then fall asleep.
Right.
You know, 1980s,
Yeah.
Sly Stallone. I mean, again, not exactly apocalyptic, but kind of headed that direction.
Well, and men are funny too. Like Bradley, he was watching John Wick recently, and I sat down. I was
Aaron
like,
loves that movie.
Babe. He's like, and he's over there laughing. He's like, because it's just so intense. I'm
It is
like,
intense.
how can you watch this? This is just crazy. Now, I did sit and watch it with him, but I definitely closed my eyes. And the dog, like, I just can't, nope.
Yeah. I completely relate to that. He really likes it. It's been on a lot lately. I don't know what channel it's on, but it's been on cable a lot because Aaron's had it on multiple times. And I like Keanu Reeves and the concept of this guy being kind of a badass and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I like that.
And the justice orientation of it.
Yeah.
I love that.
But the actual violence,
it's just so.
I just can't handle it.
And it does almost get to the place of being comical because it's so outlandish.
Yes.
But, and I think if we never stop and look up from, the pace of our lives, I feel like it's so easy to just arrive at a place where we're just kind of going along and we don't realize that we have allowed ourselves to be overtaken by some things that we don't have to. Like, I don't know, like we talked about this off mic as well, but I love the idea of giving people a permission slip sort of to, hey, like the account that just leaves you feeling down, or the account that leaves you questioning your self-worth because you're comparing yourself to that person and you're not where you think you should be and they're seemingly leaps and bounds beyond, just click unfollow, and we're not talking about the same phenomenon that went on during like elections. Like, if you are a Trump supporter, then I'm defriending you. It's like, okay, like unfollow for a little bit, but it doesn't have to break a relationship. It just, so we're not saying that. We're not saying go unfriend everybody that disagrees with you. I would actually highly discourage that. Yeah. But do like take an inventory of like the things like that leave you feeling inspired versus less than.
Yeah. That feeling of less than is no bueno. And I think self-worth is a bigger topic and maybe something to talk about in depth and maybe even bring somebody on that can speak to it professionally, because I know you and I both have been to therapy. We both are big proponents of it, advocates. I feel like everybody should go because we all have things that we need to unpack and work through.
Healthy people go to therapy.
Yes. Yeah. It's an important, like, we go and get our bodies checked out. Why wouldn't we go and get our minds checked out from time to time? You know, like to just re-examine, you know, what's going on in there. And, you know, the concept of curation, circling back to that, you know, we have to do it with people in our lives too. I mean, I've had different friendships that have, some of my friendships have lasted my entire life. Like, once I found this person, I have kept them, you know, and disagreed with them plenty of times, but kept them in my life.
But it's a safe place to do that, right?
It's a safe place to do that because we both know that we love each other. You and I don't always agree 100% on everything, but we know that we love each other and we're both willing to listen and hear the other person out. You know, that said, sometimes there are people in your life that can be toxic, and you do have permission to leave them. I've had a few people over the years in my life that I have needed to just not allow to have any space there. And it's been difficult and it's been challenging, and I've had to work at it. But what I've learned over time is journaling helps. Talking to a therapist helps. And then for me, the thing that has made the most difference with people who maybe have latched on to me, but they don't necessarily have any kind of clue that they're hurting me. They're just so, this is going to sound terrible, I feel like, but self-absorbed, that they just don't have any awareness that what the way that they are interacting with me is harmful to me.
Right.
They just can't see it. Yeah. I've learned that I've had to remove myself from those situations, and you can do it and be polite. You don't have to get into a fight or an argument with someone, you know, just be polite and then have somewhere else to be.
That's the thing. You can do it you can do it and them not even realize it.
100%.
You know?
Have totally done it.
I mean, you know, like just all of a sudden, like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I know, right? But you know, this is where boundaries, like that's a whole other topic, huge topic that we need to get into at some point. But, you know, boundaries with people, like, you know, if you know that someone in your life is somebody that can't really be trusted with your whole heart, then you just know, like when you see them, like, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? And you may not get into, well, I'm just really struggling with, you know, this and that and blah, blah, blah. You have your safe spaces and your safe people, and you designate and know who those people are. And you equally know the spaces and places and people where that is not safe, and don't feel like you have to throw your heart in the fire with people who are not going to hold it well.
Yeah. If you think you might get burned, just don't go there.
Just don't go.
Yeah.
It's, you know, summertime is coming. My kids had their first swim of the summer yesterday, and Bradley came in. He's like, do we need to put sunscreen on them? And it was super overcast and late in the afternoon. I was like, no, I think they're okay, you know. But on a normal summer day, when the sun is beating down, I know that sun. I have lived with that sun. I have had experience with that sun. I have history with that sun. And that history tells me to do a few things. To, number one, put on some sunblock, a boundary. To, number two, limit my exposure. And I think it's the same thing with people and relationships in our life. Once you have developed a bit of a history and you notice patterns, it's okay. Do you hear me? It's okay to go, okay, I'm going to recognize that pattern, and I'm going to set my boundaries, and I'm going to limit my exposure, because when I don't, I get burned.
Oh my gosh, we could do a whole show about patterns too, because everything's a pattern. Yeah. You know, habits, the way we speak is a pattern, who we spend time with is a pattern, how we drive to work is a pattern. You know, I know very few people who don't go the same way to work every day. Some people don't.
That boggles my mind.
It boggled my mind the first time I met somebody like this too. His name was Marcus, and we worked together years ago. Gosh, it's been almost 10 years now. I wonder how he's doing. I should check in with him. But he told me that. He said, I never drive the same way to work, because if anybody's ever following me,
Okay, Marcus.
I know it was really funny, but then I'm like, Marcus, why would somebody be following you?
Maybe he has not curated the amount of NCIS that he's watched.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. But I thought that was really interesting because, I mean, I pretty much did. You know, you have that rote pattern of behavior and you can disrupt it, but it's difficult to disrupt a pattern like a bad habit or a bad pattern. And to that point, to create good patterns and good habits in your life, it takes time and it takes effort. And I think that, you know, that comes with the curation process, right? Like you can curate those patterns as well.
Who do you think likely has the most trouble doing this? Who comes, what maybe people group or, it's a little bit of a pointed question because I have like an answer in my head that I think.
You do?
Yeah. Who do you think would have the most trouble with this?
With
setting boundaries, with curating, with giving themselves permission to not be around somebody because those interactions are not healthy.
Oh, people pleasers.
People pleasers, yeah.
Yeah. People who, I mean, which I fall into that category a lot. There are certain people that have been in my life longer than they needed to be just because I was so, I was always thinking about how I could make them happy.
Yeah.
As opposed to what actually made me happy in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And then I would realize over time, like, this is not filling my cup.
Mm-hmm. And that's not selfish to say.
No.
It's okay to say that.
It's okay to say that. It does at first, though, if you're a people pleaser, it does feel very selfish. And if you ever had an experience like I did when I was a teenager where I was told I was selfish, I mean, which most teenagers are, let's be real. Like, I mean, to some extent, like the world tends to revolve around you at that age.
Yeah.
I was told that. And it's been something I've questioned for all of my adulthood.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, in fact, I was around another person who I later realized was pretty toxic for me. And she told me I was selfish because I was single and didn't have any children.
My mouth is on the floor.
I know. It was a very interesting conversation. She was struggling, you know, and I think hurt people. And now I can look at her life and her situation with a lot of empathy. That said, she's no longer a part of my life.
Yes.
She's not somebody that I was a close friend with. She was a colleague. And so, I mean, I did have to spend some time with her day to day, and I did have to work with her, and I was polite. But it was a very, you know, and she was, you know, passive aggressive. So that got to me secondhand. It's not like she said that to my face. But
ew.
Yeah. But, you know, I just chose to limit my time with her after that. You know, I mean, I want good things for her. I hope that she doesn't, you know, look at other people and feel like she needs to put things on them like she did on me. But I don't know. And it's not really any of my business.
Right.
You know?
Well, so people pleasers, I think we would both agree, empaths, you know, feelers. I think the people group that stands out in my mind too are Christian women.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, and maybe this, I don't know if this is necessarily too like a Southern thing, but you know, little girls are taught you be polite.
Oh, I see. Where you're going with this.
Be kind, and you know, and there's this horrible takeaway sometimes from Christianity that says in order to be a Christian, you have to be a doormat.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And that's just not true.
No,
that's just not true. And, you know, so for all of these, you know, like tendencies, it's sad because I think it often goes to these tender hearts, the hearts that are a little bit more tender. Not that, you know, if this area of life doesn't bother you, you have a hard heart, but it's just people who are tender to people and are tender to how the world interprets them can tend, I think, sometimes to just lay themselves out for situations that they don't need to. And I think too, people that have a history of trauma in their life, a history of abuse in their life, sometimes this recognizing this pattern is much harder.
Sure.
Which makes perfect sense, you know. But I think the thing to say here is just that it's okay to recognize patterns, and it's okay to recognize the fruit of a person's life and go, that fruit makes me ill. It gives me a tummy ache, or it really makes me nauseous, or it just flat out makes me sick because of just the effect of it. Like, it's okay. Just like you wouldn't eat if you're allergic to peanuts and you just don't eat peanuts.
It doesn't mean peanuts are bad.
Yeah, peanuts are great for some people, and then they're horrible for others.
It can kill you if you have a nut allergy.
So, okay, here's let's spin this on its axis here, because this is something I've been thinking about too. It's very easy, or easier, I would say, to go, okay, if somebody is toxic for you, then you just, distance yourself, put some boundaries in place. Mm-hmm. What if you're the person that somebody is needing to distance themselves from? Mm-hmm. What does that mean about you?
It means you need to look into what that, first, you should probably stay away from them. Mm-hmm. Number one, if they're asking you to have a boundary, you should respect it.
Yeah.
And then maybe you need to dig a little deeper and see if you have some patterns that you like or don't like.
Yeah.
And I think we can all be that person for somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing. Like,
right.
If we're being fair.
Like, maybe I was toxic to that person that said that about me, and I had zero awareness of it. Like, just living my life didn't feel good to her.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just the reality is that more than likely at some point in life, we might be a toxicity to somebody. We're good.
Yeah.
It's not that we're bad. It's just that there's something in us that at that point in time for that person was a bit toxic, or is a bit toxic.
I've encountered that with my business before, because I help people make money and I help people lose weight. Mm-hmm. Well, there are some people that have some serious body image challenges that if I'm sharing something about how somebody can get healthier by losing weight, because weight loss does often improve health. Mm-hmm. But if they're dealing with some mental health issues that are wrapped around body image, they could be triggered and really hurt by some of the things that I'm sharing that might actually save somebody else's life.
Right, exactly.
So I've encountered that before. And I've told people, if I'm not for you, I'm not for you.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Mandee is bad.
No.
It just means that there's some fruit of your life that for right now is not healthy for me. But but here's the thing. Okay, so like if I'm that person that I need to distance from that part of Mandee's life, then there's also an onus on me to go and do my work, not so that I can go be Mandee's best friend and get back into that. It's just, it has given me some information. Mm-hmm. Oh, when she talks about this, it brings up all of these issues in me. It brings up, so I'm going to take that for information and I'm going to go work on that.
I've actually had this conversation with a friend. I'm not going to share her name because I don't feel like that's the right thing to do. But early on when I first started in this business, and I was sharing a lot of before and after pictures of weight loss because I was so excited. I was having great results with my products. Other people were too. And I was just over the moon excited. Mm-hmm. I was exposing this friend to it frequently. Mm-hmm. And she reached out to me and she was like, hey, I don't know if you know this. I had an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. This is not healthy for me to see.
Yeah.
And I totally apologized. And I was like, you know what? Totally understand. I apologize for frequently exposing you to this. And you might not want to look at my page for a little while because this is what's going on here. Yes. Mm-hmm. But can we please still stay in relationship, because I love you and I want to support you where you are.
Yep.
And I think you are beautiful and I think you are healthy. And this was several years ago. At this point now, though, the fun thing for me to watch is she's getting healthy and strong.
That's
and
awesome.
She's working out in a gym and she loves it and she feels good about herself. She feels good about her body. But she's also like done the work.
Right. And that's like all of, because sometimes I wonder if people get stuck on, they distance themselves from me, or they set these boundaries and Well, and again, on both sides of the coin, if you're that person that somebody's distancing themselves from, take that as information. Doesn't mean it's a, like total character call on who you are, but take it as information and just look at it. And then if you're someone needing distance from somebody, recognizing the reason why and then doing the work on that area. Like, I think that makes that separation that much more valuable, is if you take that information out of it and you go do the work on it. And do the work meaning go to therapy, read the books. Like, man, why did that exchange bring up such a visceral reaction in me? It's probably because I have an unhealed wound or just an area in my life that maybe I'm not confident in, or I just need to check in on. Like, it's all good and healthy but you have to make the most of that opportunity.
Right.
You know?
And look at it with gratitude for having recognized it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and to shift your energy enough to go, okay, like you said, this is information. I'm grateful for the information. So I'm no longer in this angry state. Get yourself out of that state by being grateful for the information.
Yeah.
And then like start to look for more information.
Right.
Like you're saying, the books, the journaling, therapy. I had an outburst once at work, and I won't go into all of the details of it, but I had an outburst once at work in front of all of my colleagues and my boss about a difficult situation. And this is very uncommon for me to do that. Normally in a meeting, I'm the person who's taking notes. I'm smiling. I'm offering some kind of exchange, but I'm generally not spilling my guts in a negative way.
Yeah.
And this happened. So afterwards, I went into my boss's office, and I just have to give him so much credit. That he was such a great guy. He's no longer with us. But that day, I walked into his office after the meeting, and I apologized. And I said, you know, hey, I'm really sorry that happened. Clearly, there's more going on here. And he said, do you have a minute to sit down? And I said, yes, sir. And I sat down in his office, and he said, you know, you shared a lot today that you don't normally share. And you seemed pretty upset by it. And I said, yep. I said, today I'm going to look into hiring a therapist because I realize that behavior was A, inappropriate at work, and B, something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was there.
Right.
And to his credit, you know, HR, you have to be really careful. He said, I have daughters your age. And what I can tell you is they've had situations where they have gone and done that kind of work, and it's been very helpful for them.
Way to go, man.
I know. I was so impressed by him that day because he didn't reprimand me. He could tell I was embarrassed. He could tell I knew what I had done was inappropriate.
Right, yeah.
And he did not reprimand me. He did not write me up or shame me or ask me to go speak to HR. Nothing. And you know, could maybe have done that because I said some pretty terrible things that day. I was very triggered, and you know, I think it said a lot about his character and maybe what he had seen of my character prior to that outburst.
Yeah.
But you know, if something like that happens, you know, I'm not saying I'm the example in every situation, but in that particular situation, I did at least have the clarity to go, okay, it's time.
It was information.
It was information.
I think that is a really good segue into like a book that I'm reading.
Yeah.
And that you've looked into also. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And the whole concept is how trauma in our life, and BT dubs, if you are alive, you have experienced trauma. Something. No matter how hunky-dory life has been, you have experienced something. So unresolved trauma or trauma that has not been healed, it registers in your body and it has an effect on your body. And so this art of noticing when you are triggered or when something comes up, or if you begin to take notice of, you know, when that commercial on TV comes on and your body tenses up and you get so angry, like that's information. Emotions are such amazing things that I believe God has given us because they are such good information. It doesn't mean that you drive your life by them, but you do take wisdom from the information that they give you. And trauma, when you have not processed it, when you have not healed it, it stays. and it festers, which is why whatever happened that day, all somebody had to do was just tap that little bruise, and then you felt it in your body and it came out of your mouth. So here's the thing. Trauma, if it's not dealt with, it stays in your body, and the things that stay in your body eventually are going to come out of your mouth and are eventually going to become actions. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be people who are operating from our trauma
response.
Yeah, we want to be people who are operating from a healthy place. And I think that a huge component of that is this thing that we're talking about curating, making sure not that you are not triggered necessarily, but that if you're triggered in an area, but you're working on that, maybe don't go looking for, like a big punch on that bruise.
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So in that particular situation, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this without going into extreme detail. But it was about a person that I had spent some time with, that I had been in a relationship with, and this person was going to potentially be in my life again. And I had set up a very hard boundary there.
Gotcha.
And so when somebody in our work meeting mentioned that this person was going to be in our industry again, and I would potentially encounter them in public, I had set up a hard boundary where, like, blocked on all social media. This person had gone to lengths to have like multiple accounts and tried to refriend me and refollow me. Like this was it was a difficult situation.
Stalker level type situation.
Kind of. Yeah. Some people don't like to be told no and have a boundary put up.
They don't.
They sometimes chase.
Which
they
is also good
information
for you.
It is good information. And so I knew I had already put up this hard boundary. What I hadn't done was work on healing my trauma. So I had curated at that point, kept them out until this moment when somebody brought them up. And then all the pain and suffering just poured out in this very defensive, fearful way of like, this person knows intimate details about me and is not a nice person, and they could be sharing this in a very public way. That was my fear. Yeah. And so all of that pain and trauma and fear just came pouring out in this like massive tirade of a speech in front of all my colleagues. It was so embarrassing.
Fun day.
Fun day. But I'm sharing it now because I don't think it's that uncommon,
right,
to have this kind of response if you're that fearful.
Yeah.
I was in such a state of fear. I was in so much pain and fear and worry and just so uncomfortable. But I did go and see a therapist, and she worked with me on it. And it boiled down to I was feeling very shameful for being in that relationship in the first place. I made some decisions that I didn't like. I had done some I had behavior patterns that I didn't like when I was in a relationship with this person. And it was not who I wanted people to see me as. And I felt like it was a stain on my character.
Yeah.
And to be exposed publicly in that way was like,
that's scary.
Major fear.
Right.
Major fear. And so she helped me journal through that. And she helped me do I did a couple of exercises and practices specific to that. And then finally, the last thing that she had me do was practice what would happen if I saw this person in public. She said, it's going to happen. She said, if they're going to be in industry with you and you're going to be at public events, then you're going to encounter them, and you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
And you need to practice that plan.
That's
so
good.
She said, what are you going to do? So she said, I want you to go home. That was one of my last pieces of homework from her, because I think I had like 4 sessions. I did the work fast. Overachiever, type A.
Done.
I'm getting through this. I'm going to do the work. And I did. And I mean, there's still some work that I still do, but I went home and I practiced it, and I rehearsed it in my mind. And I did mirror exercises with myself that if I saw this person and they came up to me and approached me, that I would be polite, and then I would remove myself. And Ashley, the crazy thing is, it's like when you're doing this work and God sees you, he says, okay, I'm going to let you practice. Are you ready? Here it is. Within a week. Within a week, I ran into this person. And it was very challenging. But because I had practiced and gone through it in my mind and just was very clear that this is what I needed to do, I managed it. And I had people around me too at the particular event that I ran into, and I told them. I had good friends there that were safe places for me. And I said, look, I'm not going to tell you the whole story now, but this person is somebody that I want to stay away from. Could you just be with me tonight?
That's great.
And they were.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because he was circling me like from like 12 feet away, like all night, just watching, trying to like it's very, very toxic situation. But I think I got through it because I did the therapy. And if I were to run into him today, it would be the same thing.
See, and I think that the framework that you've set up there is so healthy. It's so healthy because you first curated. In this particular situation, you blocked, you got rid of contact, all the things, which anytime you curate, meaning you block or you unfollow, the distance that follows brings clarity, and the contrast that follows goes, oh, shoot, that was really not good, that you will never get unless you have that distance, unless you have that act of curating out or unfollowing or whatever.
That's so true.
So you had that. You curated. You had that space where you were able to go, oh man,
like years of space.
Years of space.
Yeah.
And then you realized that you had unresolved trauma from it. And then you kept going. You went and you did the work. And then you were confronted with the source of that trauma, and you were able to handle it and set up boundaries for yourself that protected you. And I think that's what we're really saying here is, be it with a person, a situation, or even just that one person on Facebook that just, bless them, they just negative Nancy's, and they just make you feel like life is awful.
Yeah.
From the smallest things to the biggest things. This framework, I think, is a starting place for some real health in people's lives, I feel like.
Yeah. It starts with awareness, just starting to just stop for just a minute, just stop going so fast in life that you have a moment, have the ability to have that self-check that you're talking about, to be able to recognize your emotions. I was never taught as a child to recognize my emotions. Were you?
Nope.
I don't even really know when I started to really consider that. Maybe through some personal development work later.
It was counseling. For me, I was 30. I was 29. I was 29 because I started going to counseling.
Yeah. I think it may have been when I read The Secret or listened to it for the first time. I had a different work situation, another story where I got just... Y'all, when I worked in radio, I rarely introduced myself as Mandee Montana as somebody who was somebody. That was not. In fact, I usually introduced myself as Mandee Unkefer, or prior to that as Mandee Shackley, and my friends or a colleague would be like, well, she's kind of a big deal. She's on the radio. And I would be like, oh gosh, they went there. Like, it's not... I loved my job. I loved it. Yeah. I loved performing. I loved being an active member in the community and having a voice for various organizations and to play music. And I loved it. What I didn't ever want was to be an obnoxious local celebrity that felt like she was better than or whatever. At this one particular event, somebody kind of backed me into a corner. And the only time I ever took my name badge and said, because I'm Mandee Montana, it went very badly.
Oh, no.
Yeah. This person was seated in the wrong area. He was probably about 6 foot tall, and I was asked to tell him to move. And I'm about 5'2".
Oh, whoever asked you to do that should have known better.
Yeah, it was a really bad assignment. I should have never been given that assignment.
Come on now.
Yeah. In fact, I told them I was no longer willing to be a part of that assignment after this, because I was like, this is not okay.
Boundaries.
Yeah. But I just people pleaser type,
Wanting to do good at the job.
Yep. Did what they asked me to do, whatever. And I'm not afraid of hard work or doing something that's not like just emceeing on a stage, So I went home that night and I really examined losing my temper. Again, this was actually years before the other story, but I examined losing my temper and going what caused this response, and why was I put in this situation, and why am I still angry about it?
Yeah.
I had a drive home. That event happened in Longview. I was living in Tyler at the time. And that hour-long drive, I just really started to go, this isn't okay. Mm-hmm. And I picked up a self-development book that somebody had told me about a long time prior to. my husband was away. We were dating at the time, but I had the whole weekend to just like do chores around the house. So I put on this audiobook and I listened to it. It was about a 6-hour book while I cleaned house and did laundry, like all in one day. And the book was about like recognizing your emotions and recognizing how your thoughts are intertwined with them and how you're in control of it.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? It was mind-blowing for me when I first was exposed to it.
If you don't even know how you feel.
Right.
Because, 29 years old. Like when I was younger, my parents cared very much about how I felt. But my mom often felt at a loss because she would say, "What's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Nothing." And it wasn't because I was trying to be difficult or trying to withhold. It was that I didn't have the words. I didn't have the verbiage for it. So, I forget really what led me to it. But at 29, I just thought, you know what? I think counseling would be something good in life. I just think it would be a good idea. And part of that was we started talking about emotions and how do you feel, blah, blah, blah. And I was very honest and I said, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what the word is. So she hands me a sheet of paper that is cut in like 2 columns, good emotions, bad emotions. And that may have not even been the verbiage for it, but or happy emotions and not so happy emotions. And she would say, okay, look at your paper and go down the list and just tell me what stands out to you. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm a words person. So seeing them written in black and white, I was like, oh, I feel this one. Mm-hmm. But that was the first time in my life that I had tools to go, this is how I feel.
I know. And
it started with, I took that piece of paper home and it stayed on my desk. And if I was having I was getting frustrated because I knew I felt something. I could feel it in my body. I could feel it was something, but I didn't know what it was. I'd go to my paper. And that's how I trained myself to recognize, now I'm much more apt to go, if somebody's like, how are you feeling? I can say I'm anxious or I'm blissfully happy or, whatever. Having those tools. And you talk about the most simple thing, but it was so empowering because, and now I've tried with my kids, I'm trying to give them more words than just happy, sad, mad. One of my favorites is like when Noah was little, he would be doing something and I'd say, are you frustrated? Mm-hmm. And I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
But even at 1.5 years, 2 years old, he'd say, I'm frustrated. Yeah. I didn't have that verbiage when I was little, and so acknowledging how you feel and knowing the word for it, that's empowering.
I completely agree. I'll see if I can find a reference and include that in the podcast. I mean, of course, you could Google it.
Yes.
But
you can Google feelings wheel or whatever. I
think it would be, I do think it's a helpful tool. I still question what emotions I'm feeling sometimes because it is like, am I sad or am I depressed or am I anxious or am I fearful or am I feeling guilt or am I feeling shame or, and that was when I went to therapy that first time. I had never put guilt and shame on the feeling that I had never associated those. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was that I was brought up where those words weren't used because maybe they were taboo. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But as an adult now, within the last couple of years, having read and listened to Brené Brown's podcast and read some of her books, I have such a deep appreciation for how many of us are carrying around shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And the difference between the two of guilt is when you feel bad about something, but shame is when you feel like you are bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great distinction.
And it's really
an important one.
It's an important distinction because in that particular situation that I was dealing with, I really felt like I was bad. I felt like I was stained or dirty or just not a good person from the choices that I had made. And so it helped me to unpack it to realize I could feel guilty about the decisions and not necessarily feel shameful about who I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if nobody ever gives you permission or tells you that that's a thing.
Or even just the verbiage for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I really love her book. if this is resonating with you, or you're feeling kind of tense, or your stomach's churning, or like your shoulders are going up into your ears right now, you may want to read this book.
Yeah.
Her book, Dare to Lead, really gets into
Brene Brown.
Okay. Really gets into the idea of shame and how to deal with it, because shame, it can be a result of major trauma. It could be the result of rape or abuse.
Yep.
It could also be that you feel shameful about like your business failing. It could be a lot of different things.
Many things. Yeah.
The context of this book is not so much deep trauma. It's much more like, did you say something to your kid that you feel really bad?
Lord knows that's happened.
Or in a work, because it's about leadership, a lot of it does result in her stories about work and leadership and how to lead through those situations. But one of the things that I took, probably my biggest takeaway from it, is that the opposite of shame is empathy.
But sometimes you have to turn that around on yourself, right?
Right. You have to be able to give yourself empathy.
Yeah.
And it helps if you have people in your life that can sit with you in it. And two, that empathy, like understanding that too, is really powerful, because it's not trying to solve the problem. And I tend to be like a professional problem solver. It's not trying to solve the problem. It's just being with somebody in the moment.
Right.
Just sitting with them, hearing them, not trying to tell them how to fix it.
Yeah.
And that can be like, I've really had to work on myself, not trying to solve problems for people when they're in those moments.
Yeah.
And just let them be sad or frustrated.
Yeah. And I think too, because there are those out there that listening to this, there's still this piece of them that says, you're weak. I'm weak if I look into this stuff. If I need to go to therapy, or if I feel still saddened by the thing that happened when I was in kindergarten, gosh. Well, listen, there is a physicality and a biology connected to this as well. If this helps my super cerebral type people, that no, you're not weak, but there is like biology to this, that there are neural pathways that are driven out in your mind, in your brain, in your physical brain, that will lead you down certain paths, that will lead you down having certain thoughts and having certain emotions. And you can actually do work to make new neural pathways. One of a really good author that I enjoy is Dr. Caroline Leaf.
Oh yeah.
She has several books, Think, Learn, Succeed.
Switch on the Brain.
Who Switched Off My Brain. That would probably be where I would start, maybe. Or Switch On Your Brain. Just look at her stuff and just get all of her stuff.
Yeah, it's really good. She Australian?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I have Switch On Your Brain. I think that's the book that I have from her.
It's just, and it's very practical. It gives you a good education on what's going on biologically, but then it gives you practical steps on how to literally rewire, because that's the thing too. We are products today of a lot of hardwiring from the get-go, from the moment we were conceived. There's hard wiring laid in us through different reasons and different circumstances, that some of it is great and some of it just needs to be shifted. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So, no, you are not weak if you still feel triggered by that thing, and it doesn't matter if anybody has ever called your trauma not a big deal. You can just go tell them to kick rocks.
Right.
Because it meant something to you, which means it was a big deal. So do the work.
Do the work, for sure.
The Celebrating Women podcast has been presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Find us on social media at facebook.com/Celebrating Women Podcast, or on Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. You can also email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Send it to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. The Celebrating Women podcast is created and hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast.